Research shows that women need to be connected with other women and they need to be supported and they need to be communicating and feeling connected. So it's a very, very important to find maybe not a group of women, but maybe a few women that you feel connected to, that you can talk about this stuff safely with.
It's Wednesday. That means it's time for another episode. This is part 2 of my interview with Dr. Asharina Ream. If you missed part 1, I highly suggest you go back and watch that one first. Then join us. We'll be here waiting for you. So this week we're talking all about transitioning into motherhood, and she's going to share some amazing tips for you, and I can't wait for you guys to see them. So without further ado, let's go check it out.
At that point, they might not be thinking straight or having the energy to go do something. Yeah.
And what if a provider is like on a wait list, or they're like, well, I can't get you in for several weeks. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeling like I'm not feeling like myself, that's kind of the thing, or I don't like the way whatever is panning out, there is no issue that is too small to be discussed or resolved in therapy. And I don't say that because I'm a psychologist. I say that because it's true. People come to me for therapy for a number of things. Not everyone is coming to me in crisis. People just might need help setting a boundary with a family member, or they might need help resolving some past issue, whatever the case may be. So I see everything and anything, how big or how small, it doesn't matter to me. And we can work on it together.
Explain what it means to have intrusive thoughts. I know that's a lot of times attached to like postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. So what does that mean a little bit?
This is such a great question, and I'm so glad we're going to talk about it, because a lot of people don't know what this is. Like, they might not have the word for what it is, but they've experienced it. So the Postpartum Stress Center actually just talked about this recently, and they shared that 91% of new parents, mom and dad, can experience intrusive thoughts. So it's not uncommon. It's very common. Intrusive thoughts are repetitive, scary thoughts, and they're about harm coming to the baby. And this can cause a lot of shame and guilt, because when you're having these scary thoughts about like, what if the baby, when I'm bathing the baby, I'm having these like images, like maybe the baby would drown. They're very scary. But they're causing shame and guilt because you don't really want to talk about it. It makes parents question themselves. It can be very horrifying. And sometimes parents will start to engage in behaviors to avoid harm coming to the baby. So they might have somebody else bathe the baby. So I just want to explain something. The actual intrusive thoughts are very common. Like I described, 91% research has indicated that 91% of parents will experience them, but they are problematic when you can't kind of dispute them really easily. So for example, if a thought like that pops into your head, and instead of saying, well, that's not likely going to happen, let's talk through this, it's going to be okay, and move on about your day. If you're able to dispute them, and it's not really as distressing as like how somebody that's really struggling with this would say, I'm having a really hard time disputing these thoughts. They pop into my head all the time. I can't get rid of them. And it's making me feel awful. And then now I'm starting to develop these behaviors where I'm trying to really avoid harm coming to my baby. And maybe I'm cleaning my house a ton because I'm trying to avoid, contamination, or maybe I'm avoiding walking up and down the stairs because I have a fear of dropping my baby. To be honest, I experienced so many intrusive thoughts when I was pregnant even. I remember thinking when I was pregnant, walking up and down the stairs, what if I'm holding my son and I slip and fall and I drop him and we both fall? And I would have these thoughts, and they would scare the crap out of me, for lack of better terms. But I would get so horrified by that. And I think that it's really common. So we need to be talking about this more, but knowing that when they're hard to dispute and they're really causing impairment in our lives, it's important to talk about it with a therapist, with a provider, because they can develop, like you said, they can be associated with postpartum depression or anxiety or OCD, where a mom will start to develop those behaviors to potentially stop that feeling or that harm coming to baby. And the one thing I always encourage moms is that thoughts are not factual. So just because you are having a thought does not mean that it's factual, and it doesn't mean that you have to act on those thoughts. So being able to distinguish between, these are the thoughts I'm having, but that doesn't mean that this is who I am as a person or what is going to actually play out. So I hope that answers your question. I know I kind of went off on little tangents here, but yes, intrusive thoughts are very common. They can be very scary, especially when you're not expecting it, but they are very normal in that it's because new parenthood is a very vulnerable time. You think about it, parents aren't sleeping much. Their whole identity in their lives have changed. They brought home this baby that they now have to care for 24/7. And it's like this cherished prize of theirs. Like, you know, we talk about this all the time. Babies are such a blessing and we want to care for them and we're on high alert. So it's normal part of the experience to have those intrusive thoughts, but it's about how distressing is this? That's where we need to be questioning, like, am I able to really tell myself that this is, it's going to be okay? Or am I getting fixated on this and is this becoming a problem?
And I think it's so important and interesting that you bring up that it can affect fathers too, because I think so many times we hear about the mothers and what the moms go through. So, and I wonder too if it's something harder for dads to talk to someone about or bring up because, you know, they want to be there for their wives and, you know, so I think that's so important that you bring that up, that it can affect fathers.
Yes. That is what you just said is also so important because you're right. What I find in my practice is that dads have this tendency to like, I have to be strong for my family. And we don't talk about mental health issues that can occur in fathers postpartum, and fathers can also experience postpartum depression. We know, and research has shown that 1 in 10 fathers will experience postpartum depression, and they are at increased risk if mom is experiencing depression as well. So it's a lack of the conversations. We're not talking about it. There's probably it's like a taboo thing to talk about with fathers experiencing these things. We also tend to kind of put the support piece needs to be on dad. Like he needs to be the primary supporter when he probably needs a lot of support too. These are conversations that need to keep happening. We need to keep talking about so both mom and dad feel like they're supported.
With a lot of this, we kind of talk about the transition into motherhood, and a lot of these feelings, you know, just kind of depend on, you know, each mom's journey into it. So what are some ways like a mom can help, you know, an easier transition into motherhood?
That's a great question because I wish I would have known that before I became a mom. So I would say that really finding a group of people that you feel connected to. So there's a number of things. Again, we talk about, like, I review research all day long. Like if you were to look at my office right now, there's articles actually laying all over the ground. I'm going, but research shows that women need to be connected with other women and they need to be supported and they need to be communicating and feeling connected. So it's a very, very important to find maybe not a group of women, but maybe a few women that you feel connected to, that you can talk about this stuff safely with. You feel do not judge you. So, I mean, like for lack of, because people say, find your tribe. That's a real thing. It's really very, very important, but figuring out what that looks like. So when you're transitioning to motherhood, maybe start in pregnancy, going to a group of like-minded moms. If you plan on breastfeeding, going to a breastfeeding support group, connecting with those moms. Locally here in Phoenix, there are a lot of agencies, facilities, mom groups, or places that host like a whole set of groups that will follow moms during pregnancy and throughout, where they can connect with other moms. And it's just really important to finding that. Local churches could have mom groups, whether that's through fitness or exercise. There's just a lot of communities for women and for moms that I think finding those supports is really, really important. Social support is, to me, one of the most important things that we can do and we can seek during this period, because it can be very isolating and it can feel very alone. So finding that, but also knowing where to delegate other tasks to. When you're preparing to become a mom, I'd say it is going to be very, 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 very important to figure out who is going to help me with maybe meals, who's going to help with cleaning of my house, who's going to help me with like these mundane like tasks that need to be taken care of regardless. And if I can delegate those to other people, then this might be a little easier. Or who can I ask to come over and hold my baby or watch my older kids while I do something? So it's really going to be about, I keep saying really, because I'm emphasizing this, like I want this to hit home. It's important to ask for help. And this might be the time where it's okay to be quote unquote selfish, because we're not used to asking for support and help, and that feels unnatural, but this is the time to do it. It's important to do that. So asking for like really finding your voice to ask that help, finding a group of women, and also knowing that if you've had a history of mental health issues, be proactive. Get in touch with your therapist. Tell them what your concerns are. If you need a prescribing provider, it's okay. that's another, like a misconception that people have, is that medication is unsafe throughout pregnancy and postpartum while nursing. And that's untrue. And you can safely take some medications, and I'm not giving medical advice, but see your provider and talk about that, because that can be very helpful. So be proactive, seek support, delegate.
Where, if a mom's watching, or a dad, I want to emphasize that, but mom or dad watching, where can they go if they start feeling kind of concerned about either ways they're feeling or thoughts they're having? What should they do first?
It depends on if you feel comfortable with your providers. So if you're really connected to your provider, whether that be your OB, your PCP, your pediatrician, your lactation consultant, midwife, doula, whomever, and they are connected with resources, ask them. So if you feel comfortable with them and you trust them, ask them if they have referrals. If not, I have the greatest resource. I love postpartum.net, which is Postpartum Support International, has everything on their site. So if you're looking for resources for dad, they have a number of websites. They have a monthly call-in for dads. They have Facebook groups. They have so much stuff there for partners. For moms, they have countless resources. So whether you're looking for an individual therapist, whether you're looking for a support group or a group therapy or a psychiatric provider, they have them based on your geographic location, and they will list all of those local resources local to you. They also have virtual resources. So if you want, they have an online support group, just anything and everything you can think of. Or if your provider, for example, if you are seeing your OB and they don't feel comfortable with prescribing, and if they want to call, Postpartum Support International has a perinatal psychiatric consult line where your provider can call them and consult about the medications that would be most helpful for you. There's just so many resources that I don't think I'd be able to cover them all in a segment here, but, and I'm not affiliated with them. Like, I don't work for them. I mean, I'm credentialed through them. That's where I got my certification, but I don't get anything for, I'm telling you, it's such an incredible resource. So postpartum.net. I'm creating an e-course. I mean, I'm just putting this out there. Obviously no one has to look at that if they don't want to, but because I get so many questions about this stuff, so many, and I offer virtual therapy, and I'm currently like loaded. I can't take any more people, anybody else on. So I've created a resource that will be launching in 2020 in January that covers this whole period, this transition period of new motherhood, what mental health looks like, therapy skills and resources. So I am trying to make it really easy for moms to access the services that they need. And so feel free to find me and ask me questions, because I try to be as responsive as possible.
Okay, so you guys know how I always talk about how the Facebook group is so awesome. But in all seriousness, this interview with Dr. Asharina just showed the importance of connection and how important the Facebook group is. And honestly, it doesn't have to be that big of a scale. If you're just, doing regular calls with a friend or just catching up, having that connection with other women is so important. I can't say it enough, and obviously Dr. Asharina is a huge advocate of that. So I just want to say that again. That was such a cool interview, and I think just the tips for transitioning into motherhood is so powerful as well. So thank you, Dr. Asharina. And just for a reminder, guys, Dr. Asharina came out with this amazing course called Keeping Mommy in Mind. I have the link below. You can get $10 off using code MommyKnowsBest10. It helps you with all areas from relationships to your mental health to self-care. It's really awesome, guys. It's all online, so you work it at your own pace. Definitely check it out. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mom Talks with Krista. If you're not yet subscribed, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. It should be down here somewhere. We release new episodes every single Wednesday. And if you're not following us yet, be sure to follow us at Mommy Knows Best on Instagram. And remember, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you are a great mom. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next week.